The midnight drive. It was a moonless night, and I found myself on a desolate stretch of highway, surrounded by an endless sea of darkness. The only source of light was the feeble glow of my car's headlights, which seemed to merely graze the inky abyss ahead. I was alone, just me and the long, winding road that stretched ahead like a never-ending nightmare. The night had started innocently enough. I was driving home after a weekend visit with my family. The air was thick with an eerie stillness that set my nerves on edge. As I cruised down the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that I was being watched. I brushed off my unease as mere paranoia, but then the headlights of my car flickered, casting sinister shadows on the road. I had no choice but to pull over and investigate. My heart pounded like a drum as I stepped out into the chilling darkness. The night was silent, unnaturally so. There was no wind, no rustling leaves, only an oppressive silence that made my skin crawl. I popped the hood of my car and fumbled for my flashlight, the only beacon of hope in this sinister void. As I peered into the engine bay, I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. Relieved, I decided to continue my journey, but when I turned back to the road, I froze. My car was gone. Panic surged through me as I scanned the empty highway in all directions. It was as if my vehicle had been swallowed by the night itself. I stood there, alone and helpless, my only lifeline stolen away. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone, hoping to call for help, but there was no signal. The isolation of this desolate highway was inescapable, and the night had me ensnared in its dark web. Suddenly, from the depths of the impenetrable darkness, I heard a faint, haunting melody. It was a tune that sent shivers down my spine, a child's lullaby, sung softly and yet, somehow, echoing in the vast silence. I followed the eerie sound, my heart pounding louder with each step. Then, emerging from the shadows, I saw her, a little girl, no older than 7, standing in the middle of the road. She wore a tattered white dress, her long, jet black hair hanging like a curtain around her pale face. Her eyes, wide and empty, seemed to pierce through my very soul. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was trapped in her gaze, a gaze that seemed to hold centuries of sorrow and despair. Without warning, the girl turned and walked into the darkness. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't resist the pull of the unknown. I followed her, my footsteps echoing in the void. The road twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the nightmarish abyss. I saw glimpses of other lost souls, their faces contorted with fear, their voices drowned in a cacophony of despair. As I followed the girl deeper into the abyss, the lullaby grew louder, more haunting. It was as if the very darkness itself was singing to me, luring me further into its grasp. Then, with a sudden jolt, I awoke in my car, the engine humming beneath me. I was back on the highway, the moon casting an eerie glow on the road. It was as if I had never left. But the memory of that night, the haunting lullaby, and the lost soul still lingered in my mind. I knew that I had glimpsed something beyond the realm of the living, something that should never have been seen. And as I drove on, the darkness of that night clung to me, a shadow that would never truly fade. I realized that some roads should never be traveled at night, for they lead not to our destination but to the darkest recesses of our own fears.